Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Rahman Tutorials. In this video we are going to discuss about heredity and variation part 1. Grandpa's blue eyes and my dimples, and you get your height from your father and fair complexion from your mother. I wonder why I get these features from different family members. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define heredity, define variation, describe the life and work of Mendel, describe the terms used in genetics, describe Mendel's experimental study with pea plants, and describe the process of sex determination. This boy resembles his mother in skin color and father in height. Let's see why. All the cells in his father and mother have 46 chromosomes each. During the reproductive process, his father produces the male gamete and the mother produces the female gamete, each with 23 chromosomes. The male gamete fuses with the female gamete to give birth to a child. So, the newborn child receives 23 chromosomes from father and the other 23 chromosomes from the mother. The boy receives genes for the characters from both the parents. The boy has received the gene for height from the father and the gene for skin color from his mother. That's why the boy resembles his parents in skin color and height. But the boy differs from parents in other ways, such as curly hair and blue eyes, which neither of the parents have. Any characteristic that is transferred from parent to offspring, such as height and color, is known as trait. As this trait inherited from parents, it is known as an inherited trait. This process of passing traits from parent to offspring is called heredity. Offspring is never an exact copy of parents. As you have seen, in this case, there may be some differences. Curly hair and blue eyes of the boy are the differences that are called variations. Gregor Johann Mendel was the pioneer among genetics who discovered concept of inheritance of characters or traits from parents to offsprings. He proposed the principle of inheritance and is known as father of genetics. He experimented with pea plants and found the variations among them. Later, the variations are found the genetic variation. Variations in heredity occurs during sexual as well as asexual reproduction. Let's look at the few examples. When we observe a field of sugarcane, we hardly find variation. Among the individual plants, the bacterium divides into two bacteria and the resulted two bacteria redivide to regenerate four bacteria, All these bacteria are identical. However, there may be minor differences generated due to small inaccuracies during DNA copying. Now, things change slightly. In the case of sexual reproduction, maximum variations are produced during this process, as can be seen in the case of human beings. Did you know that Mendel was educated in a monastery and studied science and mathematics at the University of Vienna? He wanted to be a teacher, but he failed in teaching examination. However, he did not lose hope. He returned to the monastery and started growing pea plants. In the garden, Mendel blended his knowledge of science and mathematics to keep count of the pea plants exhibiting a particular feature in each generation. Mendel researched heredity and arrived at the laws of inheritance. He used a number of pea plants with various traits such as round and wrinkled seeds, tall or short plants, white or violet flowers, and so on. Let's look at some of the most important terms in heredity and variation. The word gene comes first. It is the DNA segment of the chromosomes. Genes control the expression of characteristics. Genes were called factors by Mendel. Each gene is present in two alternative forms called allele. Each allele controls single trait. Tallness in a plant is a dominant trait controlled by a dominant allele and is represented by the uppercase T. Shortness in the plant is a recessive trait controlled by a recessive allele and is represented by the lowercase t. These alleles combine to make a genotype such as uppercase TT or uppercase T and the lowercase t or the lowercase tt. Uppercase tt or lowercase tt are homozygous and uppercase t and lowercase t is referred as heterozygous. Yet another important term in phenotype. Phenotype is the physical appearance resulting from a genotype. For example, if a particular plant is tall, Punnet's square help to predict the possible genotype and phenotype of offspring. Let's see how to make a Punnett square. Place the genetic combination of the parents like parent lowercase tt along the right of the grid and other parent uppercase tt along the left of the grid, and the alleles of the gamete uppercase tt and lowercase tt below the parents. Combine the parents' alleles and place the offspring possible genetic combination in the below box. F1 generation is the first filial generation of the offspring produced by crossing two parental strands. F2 generation is the second filial generation of offspring produced by crossing F1. I don't think I understood completely. Let's take another example to make things clear. The human population has two variants of earlobes. Some has free earlobes while other has attached earlobes. A particular mechanism is responsible for each variation. The inheritance of traits is related to the fact that both the father and the mother contribute equal amount of genetic material to the child. If we try to correlate the ear of the child with that of his parents, we understand that the father genes for the earlobe is dominant, because of which a child developed an attached earlobe. Well, let me explain this with Mendel's experiment, in which inheritance of only one character, for instance the height of the pea plant, is considered. Such inherited pattern is referred to monohybrid inheritance. The Punnett square shows the cross between parental tall uppercase Tt and dwarf lowercase tt plants. The gametes produced by them are T and T, and all the F1 generation have uppercase T and lowercase t progeny. In first generation or F1 progeny, all the plants were tall. This means that only one of the parental traits were visible. The trait which is visible in F1 generation is called the dominant trait, and the one which remains suppressed is known as a recessive trait. Here, tallness is the dominant trait and dwarf is the recessive trait. Were all the plants in F1 generation exactly as tall as the parent generation? Yes, they were all as tall as the parent generation. Next, Mendel allowed the F1 tall plant genotype uppercase T and the lowercase t to self-pollination. As a result of random fertilization, resultant zygote can be genotype of uppercase TT, uppercase T and the lowercase t and the lowercase tt. Interesting be enough, the second generation or F2 progeny were not all tall. Instead, 1/4 of them is dwarf. This indicates that both the tallness and shortness trait were inherited in the F2 plants. Now, let's see the entire experiment in the form of genotypic and phenotypic representation. From the Punnett square, it is seen that random fertilization results in 1/4 uppercase tt, half uppercase t and lowercase t, and 1/4 lowercase tt. This gave the genotypic ratio 1:2:1. One pure tall plant 2 hybrid tall plant and 1 pure dwarf plant. Thus, 75% progeny in F2 generation were tall and 25% progeny were dwarf, which gave the phenotypic ratio of 3:1. What happens if pea plants of two different characteristics are bred with each other? That's an interesting question. Let's consider the hypothetical situation. We cross the plant producing round yellow seeds uppercase RR with uppercase YY with a plant producing wrinkled green seeds lowercase rr with lowercase yy. The inheritance of two such characters is known as dihybrid inheritance. The entire F1 progeny produces round and yellow seeds, uppercase R and lowercase r, and uppercase Y and lowercase y. In such a round and yellow seeds will be dominant traits. What happens when these plants of F1 progeny is self-pollinated? Mendel found that some plants of F2 progeny were similar to parents and produced round yellow seeds, and some of them produce green wrinkled seeds. However, some plants of F2 progeny even showed new combinations like round green and wrinkled yellow seeds. Therefore, it can be safely concluded that the round or wrinkled trait and yellow or green color traits are independently inherited. How do the traits get expressed? If cellular DNA is the information source for making proteins in the cell, how do proteins control the characteristics? Well, consider a plant with tallness as a characteristic. We know that plants have hormones that trigger the growth of plants. Assume that an enzyme performs this process. If this enzyme works efficiently, a large quantity of hormone will be made and the plant will be tall. However, if the gene for that enzyme has alteration that makes the enzyme less efficient, the amount of that hormone will be less and the plant will be short. Thus, genes control the characteristics or traits. Why do we have only boys in our family? Why not girls? There's such a difference occur only in human beings. The sex of human beings is determined by the sex hormone. In some animals, like crocodile, the temperature at which fertilized eggs are kept determines whether the animal developing in eggs will be male or female. In other species, such as snails, individual can change the sex depending upon the external environment. It indicates that the sex is not determined by the germ cell. Let's see how genetic inheritance determines the sex. Genes are present not as a long single thread as a DNA, but as a separate independent pieces called chromosomes. All humans have 23 pair of chromosomes. Out of these, 22 pair of chromosomes have a maternal and a paternal copy. But one pair called the sex chromosome is odd. Women have a perfect set of pair of sex chromosomes called uppercase XX, but men have a mismatched pair in which one is a normal sized X while the other is a short one called Y. So, women have XX and men have XY chromosomes. Let's look at the inheritance pattern of these uppercase X and uppercase Y chromosomes. All children inherit X chromosome from a mother regardless of a boy or a girl. A child which inherits X chromosome from a father will be a girl, and one who inherits a Y chromosome from him will be a boy.